Welcome to the BMC Remedyforce Summer 16 Early Access Program. My name is John Fulton and I'm one of the product managers for BMC Remedyforce. Today's webcast will be covering the details about being able to set up and test the agentless discovery capability in your sandbox. Please be aware that what we are showing you today is regarding future product capabilities and is under an NDA, and our safe harbor statement applies. The agenda for this webcast is to cover the prerequisites required to configure and test the agentless discovery capabilities within your sandbox during the EAP program. I have a number of screenshots that will walk through the steps to enable and configure agentless discovery, and also some additional information that will provide assistance with this process. In addition, there is a separate webcast that walks through a live demonstration of this configuration just as a supplementary source of information to provide guidance. First, I want to cover the sandbox prerequisites. This is the detail that was sent to you already in an email from the EAP community website. A couple key points to highlight that were in that email are: number one, we do anticipate the sandbox preview window to start around April 11th. You must be on either Spring 15 or Summer 15 in order to upgrade your sandbox to the Summer 16 release. As with all EAP programs, you must read and agree to the BMC Software Beta Pre-Release Subscription Services Agreement. If you're interested in participating, please send an email to Virginia Leandro. Her email is listed here, including your sandbox org ID. That will initiate the process to where you'll be notified around the April 11th timeframe with the details on how to upgrade to the Summer 16 release. Now, from a agentless discovery prerequisites, assuming you've now upgraded your sandbox, there's a few key things that you need to do. Some of these are pretty basic. Number one is to watch the Remedyforce Agentless Discovery Overview webcast that's posted on the EAP site. This will give you an overview of the capabilities so that you understand what features you'll be able to perform and test during the EAP program. You'll need to identify a network to where you can install the one scanner. That is the one component that must be installed on site to perform agentless discovery. And then from a planning perspective, you should identify on that network which platforms you want to discover, the devices you want to discover, along with the associated credentials. And you can see below here we've listed some of the key platforms, which include Windows, Unix, Linux, Mac, network devices, virtual devices. For the devices that you want to identify, you can enter in IP ranges, device, or domain names. So you have a number of different options there. You also have the option to identify which devices to exclude. So you can put in a broad IP range and then exclude the few devices that you may want to exclude. So what are the steps? I'm going to walk through again a few of the basic steps, and again encourage you to watch the video if you have any additional questions on a live demonstration of this configuration. Step one is to enable BMC Remedyforce Discovery. And step 1A in the upper left-hand corner is to simply select the Enable BMC Remedyforce Discovery checkbox. To get to this page, you simply need to go to Remedyforce Administration, configure CMDB 2.0. You need to be at CMDB 2.0 to enable this capability, and then select a new tile or feature, which is Discovery Setup and Configuration. So that's where you would get to this screen. You would enable that first checkbox. You would create a remote site. So there's two remote sites that need to be created. In step 1B, you'll be creating your first remote site. This will be giving you access to the provisioning server. And then step 1C is to request a discovery server by simply clicking on the button. And when you click on that button, this is where the magic starts. Behind the scenes, automatic provisioning of a discovery server occurs, placed in the BMC data center and hosted by BMC and linked to your org. So it's automatically in place and is ready to support the communication between your on-site scanner that you'll be installing here in a minute and the Remedyforce org. Step 2 is to set up the second remote site and verify the license. As mentioned, there's two remote sites. Once you request that discovery server, your screen will refresh and you will see a license type set of fields, and those fields most likely initially will be blank because you haven't completed the remote site. And so when you create that second remote site, you simply click the Here link just like you would on the first remote site. That will automatically create the remote site. And the second remote site, that is creating a link to the discovery server that you provisioned. Once you complete the creation of that remote site, or click the Here link, simply exit this window and come back in to refresh the screen, and you should now see the license fields populated where the license type equals BMC Remedyforce base license with agentless discovery, and the entitlements equal 30 total, 0 used, and 30 available. Now, to give you a little bit of explanation, the 30 entitlements identifies the very extreme case where a customer may need up to 30 scanners. We do not see that as ever being a case, but we put that in there just in case to avoid any situations with entitlements. For most customers, they will require 1, 2, maybe 3 scanners in their environment. I think for testing in the Sandbox, at a minimum, you just need 1. And when you install that 1, you will see the entitlements change from 0 used to 1 used and available, from 30 to 29 available. But we'll get into that in the next step. So step 3 is to install that scanner. This is a relatively straightforward process. You will see a number of URL links down below. Depending on where you want to install this, again, this is very lightweight. It can be on a workstation or server. It doesn't have to be dedicated. It can be installed on a Windows or Linux 32 or 64-bit operating system. Depending on the operating system, copy that URL right from the link there and take that and install it on the device that you designate as the scanner device. Now for me, I use the remote desktop connection, the Windows utility, to get to the device. Once you get to the device, go to Windows Explorer and paste that URL and run that URL. You'll be prompted with credentials. You'll want to enter an ID and password. The ID and password initially for the EAP program will be your org ID. So cut and paste your org ID into the ID and password fields. That will enable you to perform the installation. Once the installation is complete, you'll want to go back to your Remedyforce admin screen and select the Scan Configuration tab that's just to the right of the initial tab, which was the Scanner Rollout tab. And on the Scanner Configuration tab, after it should just be a few seconds, maybe 5 seconds, if you refresh the screen by hitting the refresh button, you should see that scanner that you just installed appear on your screen. And now you're on your way. You simply highlight that, select that row for that scanner, and walk through the steps down below to set up the configuration. This is where you can put in the platforms that you want to enter. Again, maybe you start with Windows. You could do Linux printers. You define the platform or platforms that you want to select. You enter in the credentials associated with each of those platforms. You can identify the target ranges that you want to include or exclude. And then the last step, step 4B here, on configuring the scanner, is to define the frequency of the scan. So there's 3 options. One is to not scan, so maybe you're just setting this up initially and you don't want to scan it. The next option is to scan it one time immediately, which may be the best option for the Sandbox testing, at least initially. And then you can define a recurrence, and that could be daily, monthly. You can define the time you want to run it. You can define the number of times you want to run it, much like Microsoft Outlook and recurring schedules. You have very precise controls to define the frequency for running the scanners. The last step, step 5, is to define the import configuration. This is the step that identifies what information you want to pass from Discovery into the Remedyforce CMDB. You have the ability to identify which classes you want to import. By default, the computer system class is always selected because that's the core set of information, and typically most, if not all, the data will be imported from that class. You also have the ability to define the frequency for passing the data into the Remedyforce database from the discovery source. By default, it's every 24 hours. Again, for Sandbox testing, you may want to increase that, or just realize that if it's 24 hours, it will be a day from the time that you initiate it until the time it will appear in your CMDB. So maybe you change it to 10 minutes or 30 minutes initially, and then dial it back to 24 hours just so that you can see what the data initially looks like. You also have the ability to expand each one of the classes to see the mappings between Remedyforce and the discovery source to see what data is being imported in the format of that data. So that's it for the steps. Here's some additional information. Now that you have walked through and understand the configuration and setup of the agent list discovery, you have a couple options. You can go to the shared org that's available through the EAP program to view the discovery data and the configuration. You can set up your own sandbox to perform this within your own environment. If you want to take a look at the configuration, you click on View Details to see the kind of details that are provided in terms of the status of the scan and the type of information that will be captured. There is also a FAQ that will be posted if it's not already posted on the EAP site with more detail around agent list discovery and client management. You can also refer to the online help for additional detail, which is also a good way of testing the completeness of our online help, which is typically very complete. And then, as always, if you have any additional questions, you can post them on the community site or contact myself, John_Fulton at bmc.com. Thank you very much and have a great day.